person is not the one for you, then they are someone else's spouse. We're talking Christian dating boundaries. How far is too far? And how did God imagine us to behave and to act in this season before marriage? One thing I know for sure, cuddle with caution. So I had a very lengthy conversation with my spiritual director, who is a priest, about this very subject. You're welcome. So I'm going to be looking at his notes. It's interesting because he started by saying there is nothing wrong with a hug, right? But he said that one should be extremely cautious, and in order to safeguard one's emotions, one's affections and one's own heart, hugging, especially a prolonged hug, should be avoided because hugging often leads to kissing, improper touching. It can be the beginning of an internal and intimate exchange, so cuddle with caution. You heard it here, guys. It was interesting, so I was thinking about this concept of arousal and this concept of, okay, something being quite good in itself, like a hug or even a kiss, like a pet, but how it can lead to arousal, which obviously can be sinful, especially if you act on it. So I looked at the Cambridge Dictionary definition of arousal. It means sexual excitement or the causing of strong feelings or excitement in someone. And this got me thinking why it can be sinful, because obviously in the Bible there's a lot about causing others to sin. In fact, in Luke 17, 1-4, and he said to his disciples, him being Jesus, temptations to sin are sure to come, but woe to the one through whom they come. People's level of arousal may be different. It may be that one person's boundary is a kiss on the lips at all, like the whole thing is just too much for them. Another person might be a prolonged hug or sitting on their lap or something like that. So I think it's really important to communicate what is the near occasion of sin for you, because if you're fine with the kiss but the other person isn't, the person who's fine is still causing that person to sin. So we have to be so careful about this and in communicating it and being really, really upfront about our boundaries. I heard something once from a couple who are now married, which is really lovely, and they said that they had a rule where they would always have both feet on the floor, so they could like watch a film together, but both feet had to be on the floor. There was no kind of like lying down on the sofa together, cuddling, because it was just too much of a temptation. So I think it's very good to like know yourself, to know your own self-control, to know your own levels of arousal, and to be really clear with that, and to always respect the, for the lack of a better word, like the weakest person's level of arousal, because that's like your threshold. Like anything above that is going to be too much. Even if like person B is fine with it, it could just lead to, you know, getting too touchy-feely or anything like that, and then obviously it's really difficult. I mean, lust is a big sin for a reason, and it's a huge temptation exactly for that reason. In fact, my priest was telling me about a story of a couple who actually waited until their wedding day to kiss for the first time, which is just quite amazing, and I think to show that real reserve and that real commitment is something. But in that, it's important to say that kissing in itself is not sinful, it's just that when it can lead to other things. So it's really important to just have a hold on yourself really and know what the boundaries are. For me, for example, holding hands is a really big deal because it's a very public display of your love, of your union. Also this concept of, you know, walking together, so walking and holding hands, there's just something really symbolically beautiful about that. So I think it's really about understanding, you know, how public are you being about your union? Like, are you at that point where you can really tell the world, like, we are together, we are courting, we are deciding marriage? And in terms of the kissing and the hugging, I think it's really important to know your limits and to know your partner's limits as well, and to have that conversation very early on, because it might be a case that, you know, it's okay for you to like lean your head on his shoulder, but he finds it too much, or vice versa. So yeah, and I think as well, staying out after dark is always a bit of a worry. Like, there's so many things, like, should you be alone in a house together? I would say no. If you live with people, if you live with your family or you live with flatmates, fine for you to visit each other, maybe with the door open, you know, just don't enter into a situation where you could trip up. Like, just don't do that. So So, you know, no staying over, no. All these kind of things, you know, they're just going to lead, unfortunately, to sinning. So I think it's really important that you just don't put yourself in those situations and safeguard your heart, your emotions, your body. I also think that avoiding occasions of sin makes your relationship way more exciting, because you have to be so much more creative about date ideas. Like, you might be a group setting or a double date or really cool daytime ideas. So there's definitely something in that as well, because you can't just fall onto the formula of like dinner and a movie. So it also takes a lot more imagination. And I think it's quite good to have a visual. Like, imagine that Jesus is next to you, or is like in the middle of you, and he is excited for the love that is forming, but he also knows the boundaries, and he knows that like until you guys are married, it is just not official. So you have to really think, like, what would Jesus do? Or more than that, what would I do if Jesus was here? It'll be really good. I think it also really strengthens a relationship to stand that test, because, you know, the world out there is telling us that like everything is about, you know, hypersexualization, objectification, and all these things. And for us to be countercultural in that way, to really grow in love for each other without the physical aspect, is so special, and there's something way more intimate about that. So in conclusion, cuddle with caution, but also just know that, you know, if this person is your spouse, you're going to have the rest of your lives to, you know, cuddle with no feet on the floor and to really be, you know, one with each other, and to become, you know, one flesh, as it says in the Bible. Another train of thought that I find really helpful is that if this person is not the one for you, then they are someone else's spouse. They're meant for someone else. So it's not really your place to do these things with them, in the same way that you were hoping that the person that your spouse may be currently seeing is also respecting in them. I think it's so beautiful because it's so dignified, and it just holds so much integrity in both parties. So yeah, I'm totally all about dating boundaries, being very honest, very open, and really accepting that, you know, we are going to struggle in this, but we're in it together, and we're in it with God. So we really have nothing to fear. Like, we can help each other to overcome this sin of lust, and also to just really show the other that you love them wholly and for who they are, not what you can get from them. And that's so beautiful. So I'm going to leave you with that thought. If you've liked this conversation, you'll enjoy my video about why sex is for marriage, and learning about, you know, God's design for that, really. And I think that will help give you conviction. It certainly has for me, in terms of staying celibate and you know, dating with joy and dating with intention, or courting with intention, I should say, because I have admitted that I don't date in the way the modern world does. So yeah, I hope that this has been helpful. Please leave me a comment, let me know what you think, and any tips that you guys have, especially if you're in loving relationships right now before the season of marriage. You know, how are you making sure you're staying chaste and modest with each other, and protecting each other's, you know, integrity and dignity before entering into marriage? That'd be really helpful. All right, well, it's been great speaking to you. Bye.